Hi there, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. I'm your host, author and trauma survivor Irene Weinberg, here to encourage you wherever you are in your healing journey. In each episode, I chat with incredible grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and celebs, as well as remarkable people who have inspiring healing stories to share. If you're looking for a podcast that's both uplifting and inspiring, you've found it. Let us help you find your joy in life. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds each of you so very well. I'm speaking to you from my studio in West Orange, New Jersey, and I am absolutely delighted to have this opportunity to interview Rob Schwartz, who is a spiritual teacher, a highly regarded hypnotist, and a therapist specializing in past life and between life soul regressions. Rob offers between life soul regressions to help people heal and understand their life plans. And he also helps his clients speak directly to the wide, loving, and highly evolved beings called the Council of Elders, who inform a person regarding what that person planned for this current lifetime and why, how well the person is fulfilling his or her plan, and how that person may better fulfill his or her plan. Rob is also a popular author whose books have been translated into 27 languages. His first book, titled Your Soul's Plan, Discovering the Real Meaning of the Life You Planned Before You Were Born, explores the pre-birth planning of physical illness, having disabled children, deafness, blindness, drug addiction, alcoholism, the death of a loved one, and accidents. In his second book, titled Your Soul's Gift, The Healing Power of the Life You Planned Before You Were Born, Rob explores the pre-birth planning of spiritual awakening, which I'm definitely in that camp, miscarriage, abortion, suicide, caregiving, sexuality, adoption, having pets, poverty, mental illness, and other life challenges and experiences. And in Rob's newest book, titled Your Soul's Love, Living the Life You Planned Before You Were Born, he explores the pre-birth planning of challenges related to romantic relationships or their absence, such as infidelity, impotence, raising children alone after the death of one's partner, being single, and celibate relationships. I'm looking forward to interviewing Rob about the choices we make before we are born that form our life plans, the determining factors whether or not a particular life plan actualizes, the difference between young souls and evolved souls, and why we sometimes choose to add scary, hard, or difficult decisions to our lives, including why some souls plan their lives with the possibility or even the probability of ending their lives. This is surely going to be a fascinating and very enlightening interview. And by the way, I've interviewed Rob, I guess, 2 times on the podcast, so I'm so thrilled to welcome you back, Rob. Welcome back to Grief and Rebirth podcast.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you and I are old friends now, and I have been following your work since you started out, and I love what you're doing, and keep doing it. The world needs it.
Thank you so much. That from you means so much to me. Thank you, because I have so much respect for you and the work that you're doing also in this world. So let's begin by giving everyone an introduction to your work. So many people know who you are and know what you do, but some don't. So how did you come to write 3 books about pre-birth planning?
Well, believe it or not, I was in the corporate world for a number of years. I actually have an MBA and was self-employed for a long time as a marketing and communications consultant. Did not like that work at all. It was profoundly unfulfilling. And in 2003, at the age of 40, I had what you could call an existential crisis about my life. I couldn't go on doing this work anymore, but I didn't have any idea what else to do. And then spirit intervened. And three very important things happened, all within just a few weeks of each other. The first was I had my first session ever with a psychic medium. I go into this session and she says to me, your spirit guides are here. I didn't know what a spirit guide was. I said, what is a spirit guide? She had to explain it to me. Then she said, your guides want to speak directly to you. And she started to channel them. And the first thing they said right out of the box was, you planned your life, including your biggest challenges, before you were born. They then went on to explain why I had planned all of my biggest challenges. And what was really compelling here is that they knew what all of them were without me telling them anything. So as you can imagine, that just blew my mind wide open. Then within a short time of that, I was introduced to a woman who can channel her higher self. And I spent about 15 hours talking with her soul, her higher self, about pre-birth planning, why we do it and how we do it. And then the third and really most important thing of all, I had what is sometimes called a spiritually transformative experience, or STE, in which I was doing nothing more than walking down the sidewalk in Chicago, Illinois, in the middle of a weekday afternoon. And I had this experience in which every time I looked at another person, I felt this pure, overwhelming, unconditional love for that person. And when I say unconditional love, this was not a human love. This was divine love, transcendent love. The combination of those three things got me to say, okay, I'm leaving the corporate world and I'm going to try to write a book about pre-birth planning. I moved all the way across the country to Ashland, Oregon, because I felt guided to do it there. I'd never even been to Ashland and didn't know a single person there. 3 years later, Your Soul's Plan came out. Now I have a completely new and much more fulfilling life that is uniquely me and in which I feel like I'm making a difference in the world. I'm glad that I made that decision.
And think about this. You planned all of this and you had choice in the real world. You could have said the heck with it and looked for another job in marketing, but instead you answered the call, which is very similar to, this is why we have so much synergy between us, because I have a similar story. Everybody talks to me about, people often refer to young souls, old souls, evolved souls. Can you tell us the difference between a young soul, an older evolved soul, and can we actually see the difference while they're in the body, if they're a younger or an older soul? That may be very helpful to us when we're dealing with certain people to understand perhaps where they're coming from, right?
The best source of information about this, I would encourage people, Google the Michael system. This is a body of channeled literature channeled by a group consciousness that calls itself Michael, that talks about pre-birth plans relative to soul age. And in the Michael system, if I remember correctly, and I'm not an expert in it, I think there are 5 or 6 stages of soul age. And it's something like infant, young, middle-aged, mature, and old. And you can tell the difference between these stages in a number of ways. For example, according to Michael, infant souls will create pre-birth plans in which they explore issues of physical survival on the physical plane. Because the physical plane is new to them, they're just here to test it out and see what it's like. At the other end of the spectrum, when you get to mature and old, those souls are creating pre-birth plans that are focused on learning about relationships, emotions, spiritual awakenings, things like that. And then there are other differences, like which parts of the world they tend to incarnate in and so forth. But if you Google the Michael system, you'll find a lot of information about it.
I'm definitely going to do that. That's fascinating. I'll bet a lot of people listening to us will also do that. What do they say it means to evolve and ascend? And do we plan these challenges in order to evolve and ascend?
Ascension is a big topic. My wife, Lisa, and I just finished doing a 7-week course for the Shift Network, specifically about ascension. And for those who are interested in that topic, go to the website of the Shift Network, Google my name there. You'll find the course. That's the best source of information. But briefly, ascension is literally what it sounds like. It's the earth ascending or moving up in vibration from a third density, or what most people call the third dimension, into fourth density, where we are now. And we're on our way to fifth density, which, as I understand it, is a vibration of oneness consciousness and unconditional love. So essentially, we're going home while staying in body, which is very exciting and also very challenging. A big part of ascension is something we call purification. This means that all the divine light that is flooding the planet direct from source, which is causing the ascension, is purifying every life form on the planet. Purifying means that the light brings to the surface, brings to conscious awareness that which is unlike itself, that which is of a lower vibration. This is happening collectively to the entire human race, which is why you see such craziness in the news now. It's also happening in every individual's life, whether or not you're consciously aware of it. Basically, your stuff, so to speak, is going to come up. It's going to be right in your face. It's not a punishment from the universe. That is not the intention. The intention is to make you consciously aware of what you need to heal and or let go of, so that you can then consciously choose to heal or let go of it. And the main way you do that is simply by having conscious awareness, conscious experience of it. There's a very old expression, in order to heal it, you have to feel it. That is true. So that's essentially what is going on now. The best thing you can do is just make quiet time, stillness, spaciousness, both internal and external, every day as much as you can. Just sit, be still and quiet and silent. Let whatever arises arise. Don't resist anything. Stay in non-resistance. Let yourself feel everything, and purification will take care of itself. This is part of everybody's pre-birth plan. And as I understand it, there were 3 times as many souls who wanted to be here for ascension as available bodies. Who made a 1 in 3 cut to be here. It's a privilege. It's an honor. And the only way you could get chosen to be here for the ascension is because you have something to offer it, something quite specific. Maybe you know what that is, maybe you don't. But regardless, know that you are supposed to be here now. You are benefiting from and contributing to ascension.
But Rob, I cannot resist asking you, what about those people who are in the chaos and causing the chaos and resisting what is going on? So the rest of us are going into our silence. We're choosing to listen, to evolve. Well, what about all those people who are making all the problem and refuse to evolve? What is the story with them?
The plan all along, and this is what the entire human race agreed to, as I understand it, is that the ascension, the purification, the worldwide spiritual awakening would be led by a very, very small number of people. That would be you, me, and everybody who's listening to this conversation. All of us are in that small group of people. One of the main reasons this was the plan, rather than have everybody all wake up at the same time, is simply because those of us who are leading the spiritual awakening wanted to have the experience of leading a planetary spiritual awakening. It really is that simple. Well, in order for us to have that experience, that requires a very large group of people to lag a little bit behind in their spiritual awakening. So these people you see in the news who are resisting the awakening and causing a lot of trouble, from a pre-birth planning perspective, they're actually acting in service to the rest of us. They're giving us the experience we wanted to have.
Well, that's fascinating. And what happens to them in their soul growth if they are not going to evolve and ascend? Do they just go to another system? What happens? Because eventually collective, and by the way, I must say in my book, They Serve Bagels in Heaven, Saul channeled what the earth will be like in 300 years. And you can see the seeds of that now. I mean, so he was already talking about that 20 years ago when I did my book. So, but what happens to all these kind of malevolent souls that are thumbing their nose at all of this?
Well, I'm going to resist the term malevolent, because to me that implies that they're evil, that their nature is evil. And I don't believe that anybody's nature is evil. I believe that everybody has the spark of the divine, the spark of love within them. Now, granted, in many people, a lot of those who we see on the news, that spark has grown very dim and they themselves are completely unaware of it. But it's still there. A lot of the people you see in the news who are causing the most trouble will eventually awaken and be part of and contribute to the ascension process. There will be some who will continue to resist, who will choose not to awaken. My understanding is they will have the opportunity to continue evolving on another third dimensional planet.
This is so great, Rob. I think you're answering a question for so many people. I'm so glad we're having this conversation. You're so wise. How do all the details and planning for a new lifetime take place? And does the soul take into account the free will decisions that the personality may make when planning this new lifetime? How does that all come together?
As I understand it, basically what happens is that your higher self, your soul, in consultation with God or source, or whatever term you would like to use, and the ascended masters and the angels and your spirit guides, all together, they formulate the pre-birth plan. Then the soul creates the personality, which is a portion of its energy that will go into the physical body. The soul informs the personality of the details of the pre-birth plan. Now, when you're informed of the plan, you sense this great wisdom and overwhelming unconditional love coming from your soul, coming from your guides, and so you trust them. So the vast majority of people, I would say well over 99%, agree to the plan and then they incarnate. There's a very small percentage, though, who start to feel human emotions like fear or doubt. Basically, fear or doubt that perhaps the plan is a little bit too much. If you express that to your guides and to your soul, then they will reassure you that it is for your highest good and the highest good of all beings. At that point, the vast majority who expressed fear or doubt now agree to the plan and incarnate. But there's a small percentage of the percentage who expressed fear or doubt who continue to express fear or doubt. If you do that, then the plan is amended until it's acceptable to you. So bottom line, nobody is forced to do anything they don't want to do. In terms of free will, your soul takes into account the free will decisions you may make at pretty much every time in your life. And that is factored into the plan. This is the reason that it's not correct to say that there's just one plan for a person's life. There are many, many, many plans. They vary according to vibration, which is another way of saying they vary according to your free will decisions, because those decisions vary according to vibration. Essentially,
well, are you saying vibration? Now, does vibration have to do with what you're putting out there? Like,
exactly.
Right? Where you are?
Essentially, are your decisions fear-based or love-based? The more love-based they are, the higher vibrational they are. That will put you on a higher vibrational pre-birth plan where more of the learning is done through love, peace, and joy, less through pain and suffering. If you make low vibration, fear-based decisions, that puts you on a lower vibrational plan where more of the learning is done through pain and suffering, not so much through love, peace, and joy. The choice is yours. Everybody has many pre-birth plans to choose from.
Wow, so interesting. So now, if a soul makes this pre-birth plan and they take on these difficult challenges and really choose this, but it is too much for them, some of them choose to take their lives. So could you please share? I know that you found some deeply healing information that can help people who have lost a loved one to suicide. And does that suicide affect a person's desire to evolve and ascend or contribute to it?
So in my second book, Your Soul's Gift, there's an...
By the way, everyone, I have to tell you, Rob's books are wonderful. I recommend them to everyone, really. They're terrific. Go ahead.
In Your Soul's Gift, there's an entire chapter about the pre-birth planning of suicide. So let me set the stage here. The person who is the subject of that chapter is an American woman whose name is Carolyn. Carolyn lost her only child, a son named Cameron, to suicide. And it happened just a few days after Cameron graduated from high school. So this was at a point in Cameron's life where Carolyn thought he was about to go off to college and start doing great and exciting things. And instead, she came home one afternoon and found that he had hung himself from a rafter in their attic, and she was the one who had to climb up there, cut the rope, and bring the body down. Carolyn and I worked with a channel in the Netherlands whose name is Pamela Krabbe. Pamela channels Jesus among a number of other beings, and she also channeled Cameron for this particular session. So toward the beginning of the channeling, Jesus comes in and I ask him, is suicide planned by people before they're born? And he says, it is never planned as a certainty, but it is planned as a possibility, a probability, or rarely a probability so high as to be almost certain. And then he says, this was the case with Cameron. Cameron was bringing back into body unhealed energies from past lives for the purpose of healing them. And he was doing this to such an extent that it was foreseen in his pre-birth planning session that he would suffer from extreme anxiety and depression, which he did. And it was foreseen that that anxiety and depression would almost certainly lead to suicide. Now, I know what everybody is thinking. You're thinking, why would anybody agree to a plan like that? You have to understand there are some key differences between your perspective here and when you're on the other side. From the other side, you know that a lifetime is actually very brief. Nobody is permanently harmed by anything that happens here. And yet the wisdom becomes part of you literally for all eternity. You may or may not know those things when you're here in body, but you are acutely aware of them from the other side. From that perspective, that life is very brief, no one is permanently harmed, and yet the wisdom becomes part of you literally for all eternity. From that perspective, it actually does make sense that some souls, not all, but some, would make very challenging plans like Cameron did. So then Jesus steps aside and Cameron comes in and he talks in a very poignant way with his mother and reassures her it was not your fault. It was my decision alone, completely my responsibility. You are not to blame. This, by the way, is the single most common thing that people who have suicided say when they're contacted through a medium or channel. They always say, it was nobody else's fault. Nobody else is to blame. It was my choice, my responsibility alone. Now, in terms of the healing information that you made reference to, I think this chapter contains possibly the single most healing piece of information I've come across in all the years I've been researching pre-birth planning. And what happened here, when I'm writing a book, I'm very aware of the information that comes across my desk because I know if there's something I'm supposed to know about so that I could put it in the book and let everybody else know about it, Spirit will find a way to get that information to me. And this happened while I was working on the suicide chapter. I came across a wonderful book by an author named Irene Kendig. It's called Conversations with Jerry and Other People I Thought Were Dead, which I think is a brilliant title. So what Irene does in this book is she talks through a medium to her friend Jerry and other people who she thought were dead, people who are back on the other side. In one of her talks with Jerry through the medium, they start to talk about suicide. And Irene shares with Jerry the following true story. Very simple story. It's about a brother and sister named Dan and Denise. Dan and Denise made plans to meet for dinner one night. Then shortly before they were supposed to meet for dinner, Denise called Dan and canceled. Then during the time at which they would have been at dinner, Dan suicided. He took his own life. So now his sister Denise blames herself for her brother Dan's death. She thinks that if she just hadn't canceled their dinner plans, her brother would still be alive. So Irene tells this story to her friend Jerry through the medium. And I want to read Jerry's response to you because this is really quite extraordinary. Jerry says, quote, even if she had dinner with him, Dan still would have had to be willing to create an opening in order for her to have made a difference. If he'd been willing to create an opening, someone, in this case Denise, would have stepped in. And even if she hadn't, someone else would have. Something as simple as a smile or kind word from someone would have made the difference. Everything is orchestrated. If Dan had needed someone's assistance to guide him in a new direction, someone would have been there. There is always a response to our needs. Had he been open to such a change, the universe would have responded to the opening. Now, I don't know what your reaction is to that, but when I read this, the implications struck me like a lightning bolt. So I took this into the channeling session with Jesus and shared it with him just as I have with you right now. And then I said to him, quote, this story seems to suggest that every suicide that could have been prevented was prevented. Is that true? If it is, this awareness would do wonders to relieve the guilt people feel at not preventing a suicide. And he responds, quote, all suicides preventable by outside forces were indeed prevented.
Wow.
I'll say it again. All suicides preventable by outside forces were indeed prevented. So what that means is that if you lost somebody you loved to suicide, there was literally nothing you could have done to prevent it. Because again, had the person had the slightest openness or willingness to change their mind, the universe would know, and the universe would stage an intervention. So for those of you who have lost somebody you love to suicide, I would invite you now, take any guilt or self-blame you may feel and set it down and step away from it. That's what your loved one wants for you. And again, there was literally nothing you could have done. And for those of you who know somebody who has lost somebody they love to suicide, please share this information with them because this can be life-changing. It's pages 410 to 411 in Your Soul's Gift.
That's fabulous. That's so helpful. So very helpful. And I need to ask you also, do you consider Jesus to be an ascended master?
Absolutely.
I do too.
Yeah.
So whether people consider him to be the Son of God or an ascended master, it doesn't matter. He's just a very enlightened being.
He would tell you, if you were to put this question to him, that he would like you to think of him as an older and wiser brother, which is really what he is.
Okay. And when people commit suicide, or I don't want to say commit suicide, that's not the right word, when they decide to take their lives by suicide, is there anything special that happens to them when they arrive on the other side, Rob? Do they go to a school? Is there a healing place? Is it just, hey, you planned this, here you are, welcome back? What happens there?
Well, if I may read another short passage.
Please do.
Cameron actually talks about this. So here Cameron is speaking directly to us in the channeling session about what happened after he suicided. Quote, "When I came here, I was bewildered and confused. I had not counted on an afterlife at the moment I took my life, but there were guides present beckoning me. I was very lucky to see them. I reached out to them and they told me what had happened. You're on the other side now, they told me, and I was struck with grief. They actually showed me my dead body to convince me that I was really dead. I wasn't aware of this as I was in a state of panic when I killed myself. After I crossed over, they took me to a place of learning and recovery. The first period of time was very difficult. I wanted to go back to Earth, to you," he's speaking to his mother here, "to my family and friends. I could not accept that it was so final. I was full of regret and bewilderment, and it was hard to find peace of mind. I often traveled back to you and my friends, wanting desperately to talk to them, to let them know I was around. Some listened, others I couldn't get through to. Some I reached in the dream state. I certainly got in touch with you. We had some deep conversations with each other during the dream state. You were full of sadness and questions. My guides had to stand by me during those talks because I was so full of grief and sadness myself. I just wanted to come back to you and try again. It took a long time before I accepted that I had done it, that I had really left my life behind and that I had to start over again. In my talks with you, I tried to tell you that I truly appreciated who you are as my mother and that you didn't fail me. No one failed me."
Wow. So let me ask you this. So he comes here to learn certain lessons. He ends his life. In the next life, does he pick up where he left off to learn those lessons that he didn't complete?
If he chooses to, which is almost 100% certain. So in his case, again, the overriding intention for the incarnation was to heal these unhealed energies from past lives. The anxiety and depression proved to be too much. My guess would be that the next time around, he'll carry some, but not all, of those unhealed energies back into body in order to make it a little bit easier on himself and give himself a greater chance of success. That would be my prediction.
Do you think he would be coming back with his mother, Carolyn?
There's a very good chance. Now, not necessarily in a mother-child role. There could be a very different kind of role, depending upon what the other intentions are for the lifetime. By the way, there's one other thing I want to comment here.
Sure.
You heard him say that when he crossed over, he was full of bewilderment and regret. I know some people are going to wonder, if it was foreseen in Cameron's pre-birth planning session that a suicide is highly likely, then why is he upset about it? The answer to that question is that when we first cross back over to the other side, full memory of the pre-birth plan doesn't return immediately. It comes back gradually. So he's talking to us at a point in time here where he hasn't yet remembered that a suicide was foreseen as highly likely.
Now, when he gets his life reviewed, does that include what he had planned for his pre-birth planning and then how his life evolved from there?
Yeah, basically, they will look at his pre-birth intentions and they'll ask him, did you fulfill these? To what extent? Yes or no? If not, what got in the way of you fulfilling them? Would you like to plan another incarnation so that you can finish what was left incomplete? What often happens with people who suicide is that when they leave, they have a number of incomplete pre-birth agreements with people who are still embodied. When they get back to the other side after some passage of time, they remember what those incomplete agreements are. And it's very important to them to fulfill them. The problem is they no longer have a body to use to fulfill them. So now what they have to do is run around frantically on the other side, trying to influence all these other people who are still in body to do the things that they would have been doing if they were still here in a body. Well, out of that large group of people that they're trying to influence, some hear them and some don't. Among those who hear them, some do as they ask and some don't. So ultimately, this becomes an exercise in frustration. They just can't accomplish from the other side everything they wanted to. And so they generally choose to come back to finish what was left unfinished.
So in that particular case, he would probably approach Carolyn and they would decide her role going forward.
Right.
To accomplish what he needs to accomplish. And probably, so someone like Carolyn comes to you, what you channel is very healing for her because you look at the guilt and you, and you let her know that there's more to this than what she's seeing in sort of her 3D reality.
Well, those are certainly some of the intentions of the channeling. But let me be clear, I'm not the channel. I'm facilitating the process in which the channeling is happening. Now, when I work with people directly one-on-one, I don't do it as a medium or channel. I do it as a hypnotist. We do the between lives soul regression that you referred to in the introduction. That's a form of hypnosis in which I facilitate a process in which the client ultimately enters a trance state and from there can speak directly with their council of elders and ask literally any question they have about their life plan. So if Carolyn came to me for a between lives soul regression, we would go through this hypnosis process. She would go into trance, then she would speak with her counsel, and then she would ask them directly, did my son plan suicide? Did I agree to that plan? If so, why in the world did I agree to that plan? That's probably how the conversation would go.
It's wonderful that you can do this to help people like that.
It's very fulfilling.
So it's very helpful because otherwise she would live her life with all those questions, those unanswered questions.
Right.
So let me ask you also, is there a difference for a soul? Say someone ends their life with fear, like Karen, and anxiety and depression and all these emotions, or they end their lives because from love, they don't want to burden their family, they're incapacitated or whatever. Is there a difference when they cross over between what prompted them to end their life?
So there are many, many levels to the other side, which vary according to vibration. And you will go to whatever level, whatever realm is a match to you vibrationally. So if you die in a state of great fear, you're going to be starting off at a relatively lower level of the astral realm. It doesn't mean you're doomed to be there forever or even necessarily a long period of time. It's just your entry point. But as you raise your vibration, then you'll move up through the levels.
And you're just there in that entry point. It's not like that any entry point has fire and brimstone or anything like that to it, right? It's just because a lot of people are afraid of that.
There's no hell in the sense of it being an ongoing objective reality, but you are the creator. Literally, you are the creator, and you can create any experience you want to create. There are people who believe that they were bad, so to speak, that they were sinners. They did something horrible that they think they have to be punished for. And so when they get back to the other side, they will self-manufacture a hellish realm as a form of self-punishment. There are beings, very loving, highly evolved beings on the other side, whose specialty is to go into these hellish realms that people have created for themselves and essentially walk people out of them. All they have to do is choose to walk out. But that's not quite as simple or as easy as you might think. These, again, are people who believe that they are terrible and deserve to be punished. And so persuading them to step out of their self-created hell can be quite challenging, as I understand it.
Well, they're having to give up their illusions and delusions, and they've become very attached to them, I would
That's
imagine, right?
That's right.
And you also talk about that those who have lost a loved one to suicide, when they heal their deep wounds, it has something to do with humility. Could you tell us about that, Rob? What does the healing have to do with humility?
I'm not sure exactly what you're thinking.
I think I picked that up in one of your books.
Probably, I'd have to go back and reread it myself, but probably it refers to the idea that they had the power to prevent the suicide. You know, as we discussed already, nobody has the power to, the universe does, the universe can intervene, but an individual personality on the level of the personality, they don't have the power to keep somebody else from taking their own life. So there is a certain humility, I think, in recognizing that.
Yeah, and accepting that, I'm sure. And what else would you like to tell our podcast audience about your work, what you're doing? I know you have an event coming up this evening. Whatever you'd like to share, Rob.
Well, I would encourage people to go to the website, which is yoursoulsplan.com. Sign up for the newsletter, which will pop up as soon as you get to the homepage. Then go to the events page and you'll see everything that's going on. There are all kinds of, there's a free talk usually every month or every other month. We have all kinds of workshops. We have a 1-day between lives soul regression. The next one is July 22nd, where you can find out all about your pre-birth plan and how you're doing and how you can do better with it. We have a Star Souls workshop for people who come from faraway civilizations to help the earth. We talk about how to activate your unique Star Soul gifts.
That in itself is fascinating.
It really is.
That's another interview to learn about that.
There's an empath workshop. We call it Discover Your Empath Superpower. For some people, being an empath can be very burdensome, but if you know how to work with it, it actually becomes a superpower. We have a higher self workshop that puts you into closer communion with your higher self so you can receive more guidance and inspiration. There are a number of foreign workshops translated into other languages, German, Polish, Spanish, going on all year long. It's all on the events page.
It's wonderful, Rob. You're making such a contribution.
Thank you.
To so many people with healing. And what is the Rob Schwartz tip for finding joy in life with all that you're doing, with the love in your life, everything going on? What is your tip about joy?
You know, the most powerful spiritual practice I have discovered, and I'm just speaking from personal experience, is surrender. That's my prayer every morning. I ask for assistance in surrendering, accepting, allowing, letting go, flowing, staying in a state of non-resistance. Those are all more or less the same thing to me. People don't understand energetically what happens when you go into resistance. And the average person is in some degree of resistance to life all the time. One of the things that does is that it pinches off the flow of chi or life force into you. And the average person has pinched off that flow so much that there's just enough of a trickle left to sustain physical life. But if you open it up by going into a state of non-resistance, then spirit rushes in and fills that space. People think of it as emptiness, but the emptiness is actually full. And what it's full with is spirit, meaning guidance, love, inspiration, and so forth. That to me is the key to joy.
I agree. That's wonderful. You know, Rob, I'd like to conclude this interview with an illuminating quote about suicide from your book, Your Soul's Gift. Before birth, we hope we will embrace our evolution with joy and excitement. But when we cannot do so in the physical, we will most surely do so in our eternal home. How do we embrace life after a loved one died by suicide? We begin by choosing to believe that healing can occur. Thank you, Rob, from my heart, for the healing you bring to countless lives through your enlightening books and your work that helps people to heal through past life and between lives soul regressions, and for this remarkable, truly remarkable, enlightening interview today. And here's a loving reminder, everyone, that you can see the show notes and all Grief and Rebirth podcast episodes on ireneweinberg.com, and make sure to follow us and like us on social at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. As I like to say, to be continued. Many blessings. Thank you so much, Rob. And bye for now.
Bye-bye. My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.